If you love Push Black's Black History Year, you'll love our newest podcast called 2 Minute Black History. In only 2 minutes, you'll hear little-known stories about our people and reclaim the knowledge we need to take action and advance our community. To move towards the future, you've got to look to the past. Learn the history you didn't get in school. Tune in to 2 Minute Black History every Tuesday through Friday, right on the Black History Year feed and wherever you listen to podcasts.
In the 1940s, psychologists Kenneth and Mamie Clark conducted the renowned doll tests, unveiling the deep psychological impact of racism on Black children. Rows of dolls, each representing various skin tones, were presented to the children. Their choice doll revealed how societal biases and negative imagery of Black people in media had ingrained themselves in young minds. The children's preferences spoke volumes, shedding light on the internal conflict between self-identity and racist external perceptions. I'm Jay from Push Black, and you're tuned in to Black History Year. Just as it did in the 1940s, society and mainstream media often leaves Black children today grappling with negative portrayals. But in the spirit of movements that proclaimed Black is beautiful and Black power, today's guests are ensuring the light our people, our kids, see themselves in is one of beauty and power. World-renowned child photographers, Kahran and Regis Bethencourt, are a husband-wife duo and the imaginative forces behind Creative Soul Photography. With more than 10 years of working with hundreds of children, families, and brands, they specialize in child and lifestyle photography while incorporating authentic visual storytelling. The pair gained global recognition last year with their Afro Art series, a collection that showcases the beauty and versatility of Black hair as a challenge to harmful media depictions of Black youth. My wife and I bought the books for our kids, took our kids to their fashion shows, and it was magical seeing my daughter's face light up when they see other Black girls and boys in these amazing costumes, photographed in amazing ways up on the wall or walking down the aisle of the fashion show. And seeing what's possible when we take our images into our own hands. Their interview with our producer, Lynn Webb, will have you questioning the images you consume on the daily and maybe even the reflection in your mirror. First up, the story of a well-known abolitionist and the powerful photography that bolstered his work.
Frederick Douglass was the most photographed person of the 19th century. His love for documenting life wasn't just for vanity's sake. He was doing it for something much more important. Douglass posed with intention, usually appearing in a suit, tie, and vest with clenched fists and his eyes staring directly into the camera's lens for more than 160 photographs. Combining his written work with imagery, he often included his portrait along with letters that he sent. Douglass believed in the power of photography, embracing the new media as a storytelling tool critical to spreading resistance messages during abolition. And he wasn't the only one. Sojourner Truth paid off her house by selling portraits of herself, expressing that she used to be sold for other people's benefit, but now she sold herself for her own. Photography helped Douglass pose in direct opposition to anti-Black societal norms. We were considered less than human, but he claimed an equal stake in humanity. Technology allowed Douglass to control his narrative, resist, and contribute to the future. It is evident that the great cheapness and universality of pictures must exert a powerful, though silent, influence upon the ideas and sentiment of present and future generations, he said. Documenting our lives and movement is crucial for our future remembrance. Like Frederick Douglass, We should never let anyone tell us who we are or control our narrative. Only we have the power to do that. What does Black liberation look like to you? Let's start with Kahran.
That's a good question. So for me, really, it just looks like, really the empowerment of everyone in the Black community, and being able to really dismantle those systems of oppression, and really create a society where everyone really just can thrive and express themselves without being discriminated against. So, really, it's kind of just empowering us to be who we are. Yeah.
Okay, so Black liberation to me is kind of a mind state first.
Okay.
Is being able to move forward unapologetically and relentlessly to obtain everything you want to achieve, and then along the way maybe support Black businesses and help Black economy rise. You know what I mean? Black financial freedom to be able to let generational wealth help everybody. Just when you have financial wealth, we'll be able to put leaders that we want in place and political leaders in place as well. You know what I mean?
So it's kind of like the whole ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
How does your work with Creative Soul Photography, how does that aid in achieving Black liberation?
Yeah. So for me, really, I think it starts with the youth, right? I think a lot of time our youth are overlooked. And I just feel like, that's where it all begins in terms of promoting positive representation and also just empowering them to move through the world as their authentic selves. I think a lot of times when we think about our early years, a lot of us didn't have that freedom to walk around as our authentic and true self. We didn't, we kind of waited until we were well into our adulthood before we were able to really, just kind of feel like we could be ourselves. And some of us still don't feel that way. And so I feel like if we start them early on, and start them, to just see themselves the way that they feel that they should be represented, then I think it does a lot in terms of progress and moving us forward in the long term.
Yeah, because kids are the foundation, man. Like just basically erasing the negative stereotypes that we see on the internet and media is kind of what we've been our mission for the last couple of years.
What are the negative images that you're seeing that you're trying to counter?
Yeah. So like I was actually getting ready for a presentation once and I was like, let me just go to one of our news outlets, right? And I just literally searched for Black teen. And I would say like 95% of all of the articles, and this is today, this is present, this is not like years ago, all of them, 95% were, Black teen was murdered, Black teen, was arrested for this, or,
I was like,
everything. I was right. Like I literally could not find, positive articles that featured Black youth, just in any of our news articles, and I felt like that's still what we're experiencing today. Like we get to meet, just through what we do, we get to meet so many inspiring kids that are doing all these amazing things. And I felt like they didn't have a platform, that they're not being seen, right? They're not being heard. We talk about in our glory book, we have a little 8-year-old girl who was a neuroscience expert at the age of 8, right? Right? Like she understands college level neuroscience, right? Like what was I doing at 8, right? Like I was still playing with
and we're not even good, man. Like this, it's not over exaggerated. I get so intimidated.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they were doing all these amazing things, but I'm like, why have we never heard about these kids? We have a little boy, Caden, here in Atlanta, who raised $50,000 to, he revamped the old school bus and made it into a financial literacy center for kids. And actually, there's on Hulu, there's a new show called, what is it? My Big RV something, I don't know, but it's with Big Boy of Outkast. And they are renovating these RVs, but Caden is actually featured on the show. He is now, teaching financial literacy to kids at the age of, I think he's 12 now. So yeah, I'm like, why are we not hearing these stories, right? Like we definitely, just need to hear more of these stories, because I think once kids see like, oh, wow, this kid is doing this. Like, I can do this too. Or I can do, that dream that I had that I've always wanted to do, but I've been told that I was too young to do it, or I couldn't do it, or I didn't have the resources.
And not only that, but, adults can learn from children too. I mean, like when you see another adult that's an entrepreneur, it can be I don't want to say but it can be overwhelming to think that you can do the same thing, especially if you feel like you're not educated enough or just have the money to do such things. But if you hear a child do it, it's kind of like small bites. You can take it in more if you see a child do it.
Yeah,
you figure
wait a minute.
right.
Like I told Reg, I was like, listen, can we go get an RV?
Exactly.
Right.
Like after saying that.
Exactly. I am not going to let this 12-year-old outdo me in the game of life. This is
I'm losing, yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
It makes sense that would be Big Boy of Outkast behind that series because here at Push Black, one of our guiding mantras is from his partner Andre 3000, who always says, "I tell it like it is, and I tell it like how it could be." Right. And that is, you can see that just wrapped in the mission behind that series.
Yes.
But that does beg the question. Do you think that Black people have been like good shepherds of their own image in print and social media?
I think there's both, right? Like I think there's both sides. Sometimes I'll admit I indulge in, some of the trash TV just like anyone else, right? But at the same time, you have to understand like, wow, like, man, I hate the fact that our youth, this is kind of the example that they have set, you know what I mean? For a lot of things, right? Like that, the reality TV standard, I guess, is there, but we do have, other sides of it as well, right? Like we have other shows that have more of a positive spin or a positive representation that, that are out there as well. So I think there's both sides. I think, through history, it's definitely been used in both ways, right? Like talking about how people use their image. I feel like Black people oftentimes have had to kind of take control of their own self-image, right? To be able to show what we want people to see rather than them defining it for us, right? So because, we can sit here and kind of let other people define who we are for us, or we can show them like, no, this is who we really are. And this is how we want to be presented and be seen in the world.
Yeah, it's kind of hard though, man. Like, I mean, you think about it, it's like, we do have both sides, but who's going to make the youth go over and check out positive, content, you know what I mean? So it's more about like how we get our content in front of teens. Because right now it's mostly teens raising teens, you know what I mean? With their own content.
Very true.
And it is, you have to be very deliberate, right? Because you have to make it into something that's, cool enough for them to want to be, to indulge in this content, right? Which is why, even when we're incorporating bits of African culture, we still try to do it in a way that's modern and relevant. It feels fresh and it feels like something that kids want to be a part of, right? Because if not, it's going to go over their heads.
Yeah, I definitely see that in your work. And I see, taking bits of our diasporic history and then kind of like blending it with a little bit of a Afrofuturist bent in some of the designs.
Yes.
And it just creates a very interesting story that you're trying to tell, connecting that history along with our future through these images of children.
I think it's, for so long, I feel like, it's not been, I guess, cool, quote unquote, cool, right? For kids to kind of have that sense, that bit of African culture, represented, right? Everything is like, oh, whatever the brand of the year of the moment is, right? That's what I'm trying to do, right? So when you think about like the kids and the teens, they want whatever brand, of the moment is. They're not thinking about, African textiles or fabrics or, where it came from or, any parts of our culture. And so I feel like we're mixing pop culture and relevant culture and infusing it with a little bit of African culture and tradition so that they still have that, and see that connection that they can incorporate, a little bit of their culture and still be cool and still be trendy, and I want them to see that as Black people, we are the trendsetters.
Amen.
Right? We are, we are the, we set the standards, right?
I really hate the fact that we even have to do this because, when our trend, like Kahran said, we're the trendsetters, and when our trend starts to die out, Caucasians pick up our trend, and then they use it in their fashions, and then all of a sudden it's back on on set again. But that should be something that we cultivate and should stay with us. You know what I mean?
Amen. I'm also reminded of the work of the photographer Kwame Braithwaite, who's kind of like the originator of the Black is Beautiful movement, and making that connection about the political force of Black fashion and style and our self presentation. Do you see a connection between styling and adorning oneself and political actualization?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like, it kind of originates a lot of times in our community, whether it's, making a fashion statement for some cause, or whether it's wearing our own natural hair. In the 70s, we were, kind of using it as a political statement for Black freedom and Black power, right? And I feel like it kind of comes and goes in cycles. But I feel like, yes, we definitely, are often the start of something that can spark a movement. Sorry.
I love that you touched on our representing and presenting our natural hair, because that's a very big part of a lot of the work you've done, from Glory to now Crowned, is showcasing the beauty of natural hair and kind of like reconnecting us to it in very elaborate ways. What is beautiful about natural Black hair?
Oh gosh. I was going to say everything. Like, I just love the versatility of it. And I think that was part of the, the original spark for our Afro Art series. So we decided to start doing this series called the Afro Art series, which showcased the beauty and versatility of Afro hair. And I really just wanted to show people, like, gosh, look at how many amazing things that we can do with our hair. We should be proud of it, right? Like, we should be proud that not everyone can do this with their hair, right? Like, this is something that is unique to us, that, is something special in our community. And I feel like for so long, we've been told that it's less than, or that it's not good enough, that it's not professional, that it's not acceptable. And, I just really wanted to showcase a different narrative, and show the beauty in it. And I think, kind of what started as conversations around hair ended up becoming a lot more, right? Because once we started to photograph these kids, that's when we started to realize, like, wow, all these amazing stories, all these kids, these, wonderful kids that we were meeting, what's the story behind them? Yes, hair is, kind of at the center of what we do and what you see in the pictures. But oftentimes we are telling that story of that child, or, whatever character we're trying to portray, or whatever it is we're trying to do. And so we are kind of using hair as the focus, but then moving beyond that and telling their stories as well.
The two of you, just backtracking a little bit, you both started as graphic artists, and I would assume working working under totally different disciplines than photography, because I've been that graphic art route, so I know you travel all over. It's like, no, not this, not calligraphy, no.
Right.
So when did you center in on photography was going to be the way to go? Because I believe it started with did it start with Regis, actually?
It's the photography part started with Reg. So we actually, crazy things, we met as graphic designers. We were both, I was working in corporate America. My background is actually in computer science.
What?
Crazy, right? I know, right? So I went to school for computer science. And when I graduated, I was working in the field of computer science, but I was still kind of playing around, I guess, then playing with graphics.
That's what we did.
Side. Right, exactly. Yep. And there were, we were both part of these, what they call urban graphic designer forums back then. And that's how we met. And a lot of people don't realize that Creative Soul actually started as a web and graphic design company. And that was an epic fail. That was an epic fail. So I was like, I was the corporate one. So I was more used to like corporate graphics and all that. And Reg is like, he's like the indie urban artist, no formal training. Yeah. And so he's like,
my feelings got hurt. All day.
He's like, why can't we just do this font, right? Like, why can't we just do this pretty font? It looks good, And I'm like, no, that doesn't work, So yeah, that was an epic fail. Right, so when we moved here to Atlanta in 2006, Reg decided to go to school for photography. And I was still working in the corporate field, and I just kind of learned along with him. We started our business while he was still in school for photography. And in the beginning, we were doing a little bit of everything. Whatever people would pay us for,
that's what you do.
That's what we would shoot, whether it was animals, kids, whatever, weddings, you name it.
Those babies are cruel, man. that 80 degrees, I was waiting for heat. So,
Reg hated every minute of it, right? So eventually I thought about it. I'm like, wait, if we're going to build our own business, why are we going to build a business that we hate, right? Like we would do a photograph a wedding and we would hate it, or, some of the things that we didn't like to shoot. And so I, just said, I didn't know at the time that we could make a living from just focusing on kids, but we slowly started to just do more, I guess, out of the box concepts with kids. And the more we did them, the more people started to ask for them and request them. And that's kind of how we were able to transition over into kids. One last thing on that is that when we did start to focus on kids, we decided, let's try the kids fashion industry, right? So if that's basically photographing kids, child models and actors, their headshots, kids fashion brands, doing kid fashion editorials, things like that. Because I thought we could be like a little bit more creative there and do something that's not just the standard child photo shoots. And we got there, we realized at the time it wasn't very diverse. And a lot of the kids that had natural Afro hair, the parents would come in to get their headshots and they would have the kids' hair straightened before they came in, because they thought that's what they needed to do to get their kid into Gap or Old Navy or whatever, right? And I'm like, wow, we're teaching these kids at an early age that their hair is not acceptable, that they're not acceptable, that they're not good enough, right?
In their own house at that, you know what I mean? That's the one safe place to be able to not, you feel safe.
So that's kind of how we basically just kind of took it upon ourselves. We did a couple of personal projects.
No, what happened was
kids.
Karen was like, no, I'm going to show them. That's exactly what
really?
Yeah, that's exactly what you said. That's what
I was trying to keep it PC, right?
Let me just flow with this.
So we did a couple of projects showcasing kids looking fashionable with natural hair, and it, just kind of took off from there.
Wow. Yeah. And was there any type of pushback to that?
I wouldn't say pushback, but I definitely think it was a challenge in the beginning, and especially in terms of the industry, because, at the time it was like all the, I guess, people that were in the kids fashion industry, it was all about getting your work into these like kid fashion magazines and editorials and things like that. And
New York
we
Fashion
really
Week,
just did not fit in at all, right? With what we were trying to do. Like, one, we had all these Black kids with natural hair, and we were trying to use clothing and other things that we wanted to use.
We like to use a lot of Black vendors and clothing designers,
and things like that. But like, they were like, we really love your work, but it's not really a fit, for the magazine. Like, we really have to have, certain designers and, this and that. And, really, I think, to be honest, I think once I finally stopped trying to, I guess, kind of fit into that mold, because there was a point in time where I was like, you know what, forget it. Like, we're about to do our own thing. And the people that like it will like it. The people that don't, I'm not even going to worry about trying to get into some of these kids fashion magazines or whatever it is that we're trying to do. Like, I'm just going to do, kind of what makes us happy. Right. And I think that was really the turning point in our business, right? That's when, we really started to kind of skyrocket, because we were kind of free to do our own thing. And then we were also creating our own community, right? Like, this is a community of folks that, kind of felt marginalized before, right? So they might not necessarily have been in that industry. Like, it was just kind of regular everyday kids that parents are like, hey, how can I get my kids into this? How can I get my kids a photo shoot like this, right? So we were starting to build our own clientele out separately that was outside of, I guess, the norm or the standard.
Yeah, and I remember in the beginning, everybody was saying, "You're not going to get clients because
Right.
you're pandering to one, kind of one race."
I actually had, I said, I remember clearly a conversation, and it was actually with a Black coworker
Yeah,
at the
right.
time that she was, we were talking about our business. I was telling her, I really want to focus on, Black kids, Black youth, and Black kids with, natural hair. And she was just like, yeah, you're not going to be able to do that. Like, you're not going to be able to make a living doing that. And I get, it was coming from a place, she was coming, we're in marketing. So she was coming from like a marketing background and like, thinking about, okay, you're not going to be able to, make a living, just focus on that. And I mean, thank God we have been able to do that, because we've been able to kind of find our audience and find those people that are connected to what we're doing, and see the value in it. And so it allows us to kind of do what we love, but also have clients that appreciate what we do.
Is there a harmony between your vision of Black youth, the images that you're creating with Black youth? Is there a harmony between that and Black joy?
So for the release of our Crown book, we decided, let's not do like a regular book launch party. We wanted to do a fashion show, right? And so we did, it was kind of like a fashion show / exhibition / after party. It was just amazing, right? So we put together this like recap video on social media. And oh my gosh, like it went crazy. Like I think right now it's like 1.6 million views on Instagram, over 1 million on Facebook. And people, I felt like, people just needed like a piece of Black joy, right? Like they just enjoyed seeing these Black kids that were not only unapologetic, they were, rocking, the clothing and the hair, but they were just having fun. They were just, being joyous. And I feel like with so much that's going on right now in terms of, we see so many negative stories in the media and things that just make us sad on a daily basis. It's, kind of good to see, just pieces and even just moments of Black joy. And so I feel like, a lot of times that's, I guess our role as photographers, we're, kind of inserting a little bit of, I just call it a safe space, right? For us to just have that moment of joy every now and then. And so I think when people see these images, they just kind of enjoy just seeing kids, having that sense of pride, but also being, having that piece of joy.
Yeah. And not only that, but, like after we're done with a photo shoot and the parents get the pictures, maybe like a month or a year later, we always get these emails telling us about how, ever since that photo shoot, their kids have been blossoming. They don't care if they get bullied. They are trying to work, they're trying to work themselves into society a little bit better than, they were, you know what I mean?
Right. They're just embracing their natural hair,
and that's a beautiful thing for me, man.
Yeah.
Like,
and I was going to say also just to see the joy on the kids' faces afterwards, right? Like, sometimes they come in and they may be unsure. They don't know what's about to happen. They don't. And then afterwards, like, the parents are usually like, who is this kid, right? Like, this is a whole different kid than what came in, right?
I love the most recent work, which is Crowned, where it's kind of like a little bit of like a remixing of our classic folk or fairy tales from the diaspora and then even beyond. And there is a story depicted in there about how the zebra got its stripes with the young boy Tristan who has vitiligo.
Yes.
And it is it's funny. It's funny how the world works. I saw that in the book. And then doing research for here, I came upon an interview that you did on CBS Sunday Morning where they actually spoke to Tristan. I did not even know that was going to happen. Yes. And they actually spoke. They actually spoke to him. I was like, I know that guy.
Yes. I know. We love Tristan. Yeah. He's like, one thing that we tried to do in the book, even though, yes, they are all, Black kids in the book, but we wanted to show the diversity within the African community, right? The African American community. We wanted to show, we have kids with vitiligo, we have kids with albinism, we have, plus size models, we have darker skin tone models, we have mixed kids, we have everything. I love, oh my goodness. I told Tristan, I was like, listen, if I had, if I had your skin, I would just walk around, with my, showing it off every day, right? Because it is beautiful. He actually has a, I forgot what the actual type of vitiligo that he has, but his mom explained to me that usually with vitiligo, it starts, in spots, and then it can kind of move around as you get older. Tristan actually had it from birth, and it is symmetrically just on one side, one half of his body, and it looks like a painting. Yeah, I mean,
that dude looks like a straight up superhero.
He does.
Yes,
he does.
He really
it
does.
is amazing, right? And so, I just wanted to, show kids like him, like, that's something to be proud of. Like, you are unique. You're one of one, right? And so, just really to show him, really show them being the main character and really being the hero in their own stories.
What I love that Kahran does is that she consistently does that. Like when the adult industry does it, they'll either have one iconic model that's like it, kind of like Winnie Harlow, or they'll go like now. I think the trend is what it was vitiligo, and then they went to albinism, but they'll do it for a short period of time and then just be done with it.
Just like forget about it, right?
Yeah, you know what I mean. So like, like Kahran always, she consistently look for models like that and make sure that they're all represented. Yeah.
They treat it like a trend instead of a life that it really is.
Yes.
It's life.
Yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a history of children's tales being used to promote racist imagery or counter narrative to the Black experience. One of the things I actually was thinking about in, again, looking in Crowned and seeing like the young girl who I believe is Ebony Black, like kind of like your version of like Snow White.
Oh, yes. Yes.
It reminded me of, I don't know if you know the story, but there's in Warner Brothers cartoons, they have famously a censored 11 cartoons that they actually took out of out of like distribution, like they banned them. And one of those cartoons is actually a racist depiction of Snow White. It's instead of Ebony Black, it's called Coal Black. And looking at Crowned, it made me wonder, is it important for Black people to reframe these stories for our future generations?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Like a lot of these stories, they are, you have to realize these stories were written hundreds of years ago, right? And so a lot of the narratives and a lot of the, oh gosh, what am I trying to say? The morals, right, of the story, it's not really relevant for today's audience, right? So like we were looking at Goldilocks and we were like, wait a minute, like, what was the moral of the story? Right? Like the little girl just goes in, she's kind of like,
roll out.
Exactly.
Right.
That struck me like a boy.
Right. We were like, what is going on? Like, so it was actually really cool for us to be able to kind of put our own spin on it and, kind of rethink and reimagine what it could be, right? Like, so in our Goldilocks, she's very rich, right? So she has a lot. And she goes to the bear's house and they don't have much at all. And, at first she's kind of like, what is this? Why don't you guys have the stuff that I have, right? And what she realizes is that even though they don't have a lot, they have each other, they have their family, and they're still all very happy. And at home, she's often by herself because her parents are out working to, buy her all these nice things. And she realizes that what's most important are the people around her, right? And her loved ones. And so, it's really just kind of rethinking what these stories could be. One of the things that we do also is we have a chapter on African folklore stories because we felt like, those are not really told, like, when did we ever learn about African folklore stories, right? Like hardly ever. But even with those, a lot of the stories were around, the father selling off the restaurant, you know what I mean? Or something, you know what I mean? And it's just kind of outdated, right?
Exactly.
And so we were able to kind of put our own stamp on it and make it a little bit more modern for today's youth and today's society, and hopefully even tomorrow's.
Documenting the violence that we have experienced over time, you know, everything from images of, you know, slavery or Emmett Till, the classic on tragic open casket picture, all the way down to now you can go to the body cam footage that we see of atrocities being put upon a black man. Do you believe that such documentation has a positive goal in leading us to political change?
Absolutely. I think there's a place and space for both, right? Like, I feel like, you know, that's also how we move forward. You know, if Emmett Till's mom had never agreed to, you know, show, you know, his body like that, right? Like, it wouldn't have sparked, you know, some of the change that it did. Same with George Floyd's beating being aired on TV. Like, you know, oftentimes that could be the spark that people need, because sometimes it needs to be that in your face moment, right? Like, there needs to be that. But I think there needs to be a balance, right? Because I think what tends to happen when they only see that side is they start to get this one-sided view of who we are, right? Like, oh, well, you know, it's this person and they're, you know, if they weren't doing this or they're doing this all the time, or, you know what I mean? Like, and they start to kind of get that one view and not really see a holistic view of like, no, actually we have kids that are out there that are doing these amazing things, or we have, you know, youth or black men or whoever that are intelligent, that are doing this, you know? And so I feel like it is important for us to showcase both sides.
We're the resilient race that we are because of our tragedy. And I feel like our tragedy is our fuel, but we also need that driver because we still need to push forward. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's definitely our fuel. And we are the strong race that we are as well because of that, you know, because of our past.
What do you say to people who might counter that the demand for positive Black images out there is just another form of respectability politics?
That's a good question. You know, I would say, oh gosh, how do I answer that?
I know how you want to answer it, but how do you answer it here on in?
Yeah. right. You know, really, I would say that, you know, for me, the goal is nothing other than for kids to be able to, you know, have a more positive representation of themselves and to see themselves in a different light. So, you know, for me, it doesn't matter what other people think in terms of, oh, you're doing this because, or you're doing this because I know that, you know, the number one goal for us is the kids that, you know, we photograph every day. And it's for them to be able to walk out, you know, with their chest held, you know, out a little bit more and their head held high, and for them to not have the same struggles that we did. You know, a lot of times, you know, for us growing up, you know, I didn't know my own natural hair until I was probably well into my 20s, right? Mid-20s. The funny thing is, I remember my roommate in college, this was like our sophomore year in college, and she had me cut off all of her relaxer. And I just remember the time like, oh my gosh, like, what are you doing? Like, you know, like, I mean, she had like really long hair, right? Like this long hair, like down her shoulders. And she had me cut it all the way off, you know, until it was natural. And I just remember like, oh my gosh, like, and because it was like, you know, for me, that was kind of like unheard of at the time. Like, you know, what you mean you're going to cut, you know, your hair and you're not going to, it's just going to be your natural hair, you know, but you know, eventually it took time for me to learn my hair and understand why it was important for me to love and, you know, get used to my own natural hair. And so I hope that, you know, now with the kids, you know, being able to see themselves in books and in their cartoons and TV shows that, you know, they feel more empowered to be able to, you know, walk in as their true authentic selves early on and not feel that they have to, you know, be something different all through their lifehood.
What is photography's responsibility to document reality versus imagining what it could be?
So I think that there's a bit of responsibility of both, right? Like I think as an artist, we always want to kind of showcase what could be, and I love the fantasy, I love the, you know, I love kind of playing dress up and kind of thinking about what could be. I think that there's a place, there are obviously photographers that kind of focus on the documentary style of it, side of it, right? That, have that. But I think, the same way that I said earlier, there's a place for both. Like, I think that there's a need for both. Like, there's a need. I have a friend, a photographer friend, Lindsay, who that's her thing. Like, she is a documentary and editorial photographer. And I love seeing, the images that she captures, right? Because she's capturing what's there in the moment, whether it's telling someone's specific story or, talking about, and capturing what's going on in the world at the moment. And then for us, sometimes it's telling a kid's particular story, like for instance, the neuroscience expert girl, and being able to show that in a creative way. And so sometimes we are taking their story, but then adding elements of fantasy and elements of surrealism so that it just makes a more interesting image. So I think that there's a way to kind of do both, that we can, take the character and take their story, but then use our creative skills to showcase them in a creative way.
I think it's all necessary, man. From what we do, and then the other side of it of photographers keeping it real, and just documenting reality. You know what I mean? That's very necessary, and it's kind of like us recording our tragedy.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's necessary for people to see that because this is our history. Unfortunately,
right.
It's what
and you
makes
kind of want to
us,
show
what I mean?
all sides of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't know where you're going unless you know who you are, and this is who we are. You know
That's
what I
right.
mean?
Kahran and Regis Bethencourt, thank you very much for joining us for Black History Year.
Oh, man. We appreciate it. Thank y'all for having us, man.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. This was fun.
That was Kahran and Regis Bethencourt of Creative Soul Photography. To learn more about their incredible work, visit www.creativesoulphoto.com. At Push Black, we agree with Marcus Garvey when he said, "A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." We believe telling empowering stories on Black life and history can build a more liberated Black future. Being here with us lets us know you probably feel like that's important too. You matter. Your choice to be here matters. It lets us know that you value this work. And you make Push Black happen with your contributions at blackhistoryyear.com. Most people do $5 or $10 a month, but really, everything makes a difference. Thank you for supporting the work. Black History Year is a production of Push Black, the nation's largest nonprofit Black media company. Our team includes Tariq Alani, Brooke Brown, Tasha Taylor, Somalia Ramin, Amber Davis, and Darren Wallace. Producing this episode, we have Sydney Smith and Lynn Webb for Push Black, and Ronald Young Jr., who also edits the show. Black History Year's executive producers are Lily Workna and me, Julian Walker. Peace.